Act 1. The Missingest Man in New York. New York City, 1930. It was a city of dizzying heights and desperate lows. The Roaring Twenties had just ended, its echoes of jazz and champagne still lingering in the grand ballrooms of Fifth Avenue, while the cold shadow of the Great Depression was beginning to fall upon the streets below. It was the city of Tammany Hall, a powerful and notoriously corrupt political machine that controlled nearly every aspect of public life. In this city of glamour and grit, of power and secrets, few men had risen as high or as fast as New York Supreme Court Justice Joseph Force Crater. To the public, Judge Crater was the epitome of success. At 41, he was handsome, dapper, and immaculately dressed, a regular in the city's best restaurants and theaters. He was a man of society, a friend to powerful politicians, Broadway producers, and high-flying businessmen. His appointment to the state's highest court by the governor, Franklin D. Roosevelt, had cemented his place among the city's elite. He was a man who seemed to have everything: a powerful career, a beautiful wife, and a future that shone with limitless promise. But Judge Crater's meteoric rise was no accident. It was fueled by his deep and intricate connections to the Tammany Hall political machine. He was a master of the backroom deal, a man who understood the complex web of favors and allegiances that truly ran the city. His success was built not just on his legal mind, but on his ability to navigate the murky waters where law, politics, and power all converged. In the summer of 1930, Judge Crater was on vacation with his wife, Stella, at their cabin in Maine. It was supposed to be a peaceful retreat from the city's relentless pace. But in late July, the judge received a mysterious telephone call. He told his wife little about it, only that it was urgent business and that he needed to return to New York for a few days to straighten out a few people. He promised he would be back in time for her birthday on August 9th. On August 3rd, he arrived back in the sweltering heat of the city. He spent the next few days in his courthouse chambers, and according to his assistant, he was acting strangely. He was seen destroying several documents and moving large portfolios of files out of his office. He also cashed 2 large checks, withdrawing over $5,000, a small fortune at the time, from his bank account. What was this urgent business? What sensitive documents was he removing? And why did he need so much cash? The powerful judge was preparing for something, but no one knew what. Act 2. A Secret Life. While the public saw Judge Crater as a pillar of judicial integrity, the investigation that followed his disappearance would uncover a very different man. A man who led a carefully constructed double life. Behind the facade of the respectable judge was a world of Broadway showgirls, illegal dealings, and the deep, pervasive corruption of the Tammany Hall political machine. The heart of Crater's secret life was a woman named Sally Lou Ritz. She was a glamorous showgirl, a dancer in the risque Broadway revues of the era. In the 1930s, it was common for powerful, wealthy men to have showgirl mistresses, showering them with gifts, apartments, and money in exchange for their company. Judge Crater was no exception. He was a frequent and well-known patron of the city's speakeasies and theaters, and by many accounts, he was deeply infatuated with Sally Lou Ritz. He was, in effect, her sugar daddy, and he spent a fortune on her. But where did this money come from? A judge's salary, while respectable, was not enough to finance such an extravagant secret life. The answer, investigators believed, lay in Crater's other secret: his role as a key player in Tammany Hall's corrupt system of selling political offices. In the New York of that era, Becoming a judge often had less to do with legal brilliance and more to do with having the right connections and the right amount of cash. Judicial appointments were frequently bought and paid for, with powerful politicians acting as brokers. Strong evidence suggests that Judge Joseph Crater was one of the machine's most important financial middlemen. The secret files he was seen removing from his office in the days before he vanished were believed to be the ledgers of these corrupt transactions, detailing who paid what to whom for their seat on the bench. This was an incredibly dangerous game, and in the summer of 1930, the game was beginning to unravel. A massive investigation into public corruption was quietly getting underway, and the foundations of the Tammany Hall empire were starting to crack. As a key insider, Judge Crater would have been a star witness for any grand jury investigation. He knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. This put him in a terrifying position. His knowledge made him a threat to some of the most powerful and ruthless men in the city. His two secret lives, the world of Broadway glamour and the world of political graft, were now on a collision course. The money from the corrupt deals was likely funding his affair, and his affair made him vulnerable to blackmail. He was a man surrounded by secrets, a man with a very long list of powerful enemies who would have every reason to want him to disappear permanently. Act 3. The Final Taxi Ride. August 6, 1930. This was the last day anyone would report seeing Judge Joseph Force Crater. His movements on this day were a strange mix of the mundane and the deeply mysterious, a series of final actions before he stepped off the face of the earth. His day began at his courthouse chambers. He spent several hours there, but not on judicial work. His assistant later reported that the judge spent the morning going through his files, pulling out numerous documents and destroying many of them. The ones he kept, he packed into 2 large briefcases. He seemed to be methodically erasing parts of his own history while carefully preserving others. Before leaving, he told his law clerk he was going up the state for a swim. A bizarre and almost certainly false statement that added another layer of mystery to his intentions. That afternoon, he had his assistant cash the 2 large checks he had prepared, turning them into $5,150 in cash. Crater then took the 2 briefcases, now heavy with his secret files and a large sum of money, and had his assistant help him carry them back to his Fifth Avenue apartment. He arrived at his apartment around midday, greeted his maid, and told her he would be going out for the evening to the theater. He then left, leaving the briefcases behind. That evening, Judge Crater appeared to be in a perfectly normal and cheerful mood. He had bought a ticket for a popular Broadway comedy show. Before the show, he met a friend, a lawyer named William Klein, and his showgirl mistress, Sally Lou Ritz, for dinner at a chop house restaurant on West 45th Street. According to Klein, the dinner was unremarkable. Crater was relaxed and jovial, chatting about the show they were about to see. There was no sign of a man in distress, or a man who was about to disappear forever. At around 9:10 p.m., the dinner party broke up. The 3 of them walked out onto the bustling sidewalk, filled with the lights and sounds of the Broadway theater district. Judge Crater waved down a taxi. He said a casual good night to his companions, climbed into the back of the cab, and gave them a final, cheerful wave through the window. William Klein and Sally Lou Ritz watched as the taxi turned the corner and disappeared into the stream of New York City traffic. It was the last confirmed sighting of the judge. From the moment that taxi turned the corner, Judge Joseph Force Crater, a man at the pinnacle of New York's legal and political world, vanished completely, leaving behind a trail of baffling clues and a mystery that would endure for nearly a century. Act 4. A Vanishing Act. One of the most bizarre aspects of Judge Crater's disappearance is the silence that followed it. A prominent Supreme Court justice had vanished from the heart of New York City. Yet for weeks, almost no one seemed to notice, or at least, no one raised an alarm. Back in Maine, his wife Stella grew increasingly anxious. The judge had promised to be back for her birthday on August 9th, but he never arrived. She began making a series of frantic phone calls to their friends and his colleagues in New York. She was met with a strange and frustrating series of polite reassurances. Some said he was on a trip to Atlantic City. Others claimed he was on a secret political mission for Tammany Hall. No one seemed to share her sense of panic. It wasn't until weeks later, on September 3rd, nearly a full month after he was last seen, that a desperate Stella Crater finally managed to convince the New York City police to take her husband's disappearance seriously and officially open a missing persons investigation. This critical month-long delay meant that any potential trail, the taxi driver, witnesses on the street, had gone completely cold. The investigation was starting from an almost impossible position. The police finally unsealed Crater's Fifth Avenue apartment. The scene inside only deepened the mystery. The two large briefcases, which Crater had so carefully packed with his secret files and thousands of dollars in cash, were gone. But on his dresser, investigators found his watch, his wallet, and a neat stack of the cash he hadn't taken with him. And next to the money, they found a single cryptic note, written by the judge and addressed to his wife. In it, he spoke of a duty he had to perform and hinted at a dark conspiracy against him. "I have been made the victim of a frame-up," he wrote. He also wrote that it was better for you that I am going out of your life. The note had the tone of a suicide letter. Yet it also spoke of being wronged by powerful forces. Was he planning to take his own life? Or was he being forced into a situation from which he knew he would not return? The discovery of the note and the missing briefcases sent the investigation into a frenzy. The police now had a motive, or at least the hint of one. The judge was involved in something dangerous, something that had either led him to flee for his life or had gotten him killed. But with a month-old trail and no other clues, they were left chasing shadows. The man the press would soon dub the Missingest Man in New York had performed the perfect vanishing act. Act 5. Theories. Murder or escape? With no body and no credible sightings, the case of Judge Crater became a national guessing game. The police were inundated with tips, from the plausible to the utterly fantastic. Over the years, these have coalesced into three major theories that attempt to explain the fate of the missingest man in New York. The first and most widely believed theory is that Judge Crater was murdered to ensure his silence. He was a key cog in the corrupt Tammany Hall machine, a man who handled the dirty money and knew the secrets of some of the most powerful men in the state. In the summer of 1930, with a major corruption investigation looming, Crater would have been a prime target for a grand jury. His testimony could have brought down the entire house of cards. According to this theory, powerful politicians or mobsters connected to Tammany Hall decided that Crater knew too much. They lured him to a meeting on the night of August 6th, possibly under the pretense of straightening things out, and killed him, disposing of his body so thoroughly that it would never be found. The frame-up he mentioned in his final note could have been a reference to the impossible situation he found himself in. The second theory also points to murder, but for a more personal reason. It focuses on his secret life with the Broadway showgirls. Crater was known to be infatuated with Sally Lou Ritz, but he was not her only powerful admirer. Did a jealous rival, perhaps a high-ranking gangster, have him eliminated? Or was he the victim of a blackmail plot gone wrong? In the seedy underworld of 1930s Broadway, where show business and organized crime were often intertwined, there were plenty of people who played for high stakes and settled their scores with violence. But there is a third, equally compelling theory that involves no violence at all. That Judge Crater wasn't a victim, but the architect of his own disappearance. Faced with the inevitable collapse of his career from the corruption scandal, the potential for prison time, and the public humiliation of his secret life being exposed, Crater may have chosen the only option he felt was left. He decided to run. This theory is supported by his actions in his final days. He methodically destroyed incriminating documents, but he also packed 2 briefcases with the most important files. He withdrew a large sum of cash, the perfect seed money for a new life. The cryptic note he left for his wife could be read not as a suicide note, but as a final, dramatic farewell. Did Judge Crater's taxi that night take him not to his death, but to a train station or a dock, where he began a journey to a new life under a new name, perhaps in Canada or South America? Act 6, The Ghost of Broadway. The initial, massive investigation into Judge Crater's disappearance eventually wound down, leaving a cold case file that would become one of the most famous in American history. His wife, Stella, had him legally declared dead in 1939, but the mystery of his fate was far from over. Judge Crater became a ghost, a permanent fixture in the folklore of New York City. For decades, the phrase "to pull a crater" became common slang for disappearing. Nightclub comedians and radio hosts would end their shows by saying, "Good night, Judge Crater, wherever you are." He was a household name, not for his accomplishments in life, but for the perfect, absolute nature of his vanishing act. The case remained completely cold for decades, until a final, bizarre clue emerged from the mists of time. In 2005, police received a letter that had been written by a woman named Stella Ferrucci Good on her deathbed. In the letter, she claimed that her husband, a man with mob connections, had told her the truth about what happened to Judge Crater. She wrote that her husband and his brothers, one of whom was a New York City police officer, had murdered the judge and buried his body under the Coney Island boardwalk, at the very spot where the New York Aquarium now stands. It was a stunning lead, a possible deathbed confession that could solve the 85-year-old mystery. But an excavation of the site was deemed impossible. The truth, if it was ever there, was now buried under tons of concrete and steel. The lead, like all the others, went nowhere. And so, the mystery endures. Was Judge Crater a victim of the corrupt political machine he served? Was he murdered by a jealous rival or a gangster? Or was he the ultimate escape artist, a man who successfully erased his own existence and lived out his days under a new name? After more than 90 years, the answer is no closer than it was on that hot August night in 1930. The disappearance of Judge Joseph Force Crater remains the perfect mystery. A story of a man who, at the height of his power, stepped into a taxi and drove off the edge of the world, leaving behind nothing but a ghost that still haunts the sidewalks of New York. What do you think happened to Judge Crater? Share your theory in the comments below. And for more of history's most baffling disappearances, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Dark Cell Stories.